going down, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Commander Ad Populum. Commander for the people, by the people, for the people. My name is Ryan. This is episode 14. I think I got that wrong last week, but today's a new week. This week is a new week. We've got a couple very special episodes lined up for you. I'm very excited about these. We're going to stray away from our typical format of the community, the technical, and the set retrospective. We're gonna stray away from that for the next two episodes because I've got a special guest lined up, and we're gonna do a couple interview style podcasts that I think that everybody's gonna like, and it's a topic that I think is relevant to everybody and important to everybody, myself included. Before we get to it though, I wanted to do a quick thank you and shout out to FusionGamingOnline.com. They are the sponsors of Commander Ad Populum. They make this episode and all the episodes like it possible. Very much appreciate them. You can head over to FusionGamingOnline.com for all of your Magic the Gathering and gaming needs, and you can check out Commander Ad Populum along with all of Fusion Gaming's sponsored content at themanabase.com. Ad Populum, as well as other audio, visual, and written Magic articles, content, you can find it all there. So big thank you to themanabase.com as well. A couple new patrons to announce. Shout out and thank you to Jacob Anderson. New patron, great to have you aboard. And shout out to Max Crandell. And you might recognize the name Max Crandell from CMDR Central, another Commander-focused podcast, or of course from Brando and I calling him out on Commander Cookout podcast. So big thank you and shout out and F you to Max. Turns out that he isn't such a scumbag after all. He's willing to support other content creators, and I very much appreciate that, Max. And that all being said, Max Crandell is actually the patron that unlocked the bonus altered art tutorial content. So that is, the production of that is starting this week. We've got some extra time this week that I don't normally have, so I'm, of course, filling it up with more Magic content, I guess. And that'll be available over on patreon.com/cadpopcast. That's where you can find me. That's where you can become a patron if you'd so wish to pledge to the cause, that is Commander Ad Populum. Patrons do make it all possible for me. If you'd like to find me on Twitter, @cadpopcast, you can reach out there, facebook.com/cadpopcast, or cadpopcast@gmail.com. That is cadpopcast@gmail.com. That's all the places you can find me. And of course, all of the back episodes are available on Patreon, iTunes, Google Play, I should say Apple Podcasts, whatever. And now all of the bonus altered art tutorial content is going to be available on the Patreon page as well. The first couple ones I think are going to be some written stuff, some pictures, supplies, my setup, the studio type thing, and of course the basics for anybody who's interested in getting started. Or maybe if people want to try their own hand at altering, maybe we can set up an altar exchange maybe between patrons or friends of the show, and we can all kind of show off each other's work and each other's decks. I think that'll be fun. So if you're interested in that, let me know, either on the patron Discord or just by tweeting at me. I'd very much appreciate that. So without further ado, I said that I've got a very special interview lined up, and I'm excited to finally have on the show, after we've been talking about it for a long time, my good friend Jesse. Jesse, how's it going?
It's going pretty awesome, Ryan. How about you, man?
I'm good. We are here to talk about some heavy-hitting stuff today in terms of how I think of it. You have a different mentality on what we're talking about because you deal with it every day. I don't want to say you suffer from it. Is that the right word?
I mean, there's different ways of putting it. I mean, you can say suffer from it because, again, for a lot of people, the experience is one of suffering. You could even just say, again, it's just my own experience, right? Everyone's going to experience it a little bit differently. So
okay, so we are talking about, for everybody listening along at home, we are talking about depression and anxiety.
Yep.
And this was one of the main reasons I wanted to start Commander Ad Populum, is to address people in the Magic community and give them some of the tools that they need to be not only successful Magic players, but use Magic as a means to help them as a tool. Release mechanism? I don't know what the right words are that maybe you would use as somebody who uses Magic that way. But that's what we're going to aim to do.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about yourself. We have known each other for a long time, so mostly it's for the listeners. Yeah. You and I have known each other since we were 13?
Pretty close to, yeah. I mean, it's kind of frightening to think that it's been that long now.
How old are you in 13? What is that, like 8th grade?
Yeah, about there.
8th grade for the United States listeners, grade 8ers for the Canadians.
Yeah, pretty much.
So give us the backstory. When did you start playing Magic?
So I would have started playing Magic. It would have been 1990. Oh God, 98.
98.
I think.
So that would have been right around Urza block.
No. Was it 98? I think no.
What was your first set?
First set was Mirage. So
I just covered Mirage. I'm doing Mirage block as the set retrospective on the regular edition of the show. This is a weird one, but I just covered Vision. So the next one's Weatherlight, right in your home base, I guess, right?
Oh.
Okay. We started playing together in the basement of the Share building, right? Remember that place? Remember that?
Yeah,
place?
oh, yeah.
Okay, so that's where we played. It was like this meeting place for some union office. I don't even know what it was because I was probably too young.
Yeah. It was. Think of it more as like a community center of sorts.
Okay, that's what we'll call it.
Yeah.
Wink, that's what we'll call it. Okay, so you went to, as we kind of grew up, everybody goes in and out of playing Magic. Nobody ever quits, right?
Yeah.
They call it cardboard crack, right? Nobody ever quits. So you went to one high school. I went to a different high school.
Yep.
We split ways. When we went to different high schools, did you continue to play? Did you stop playing?
Yeah, so I played, I guess, solidly up through, I guess it would have been Invasion Block, a bit into Apocalypse, and then I took a break shortly thereafter.
So like Lorwyn block and
Yeah, I missed
8th edition Mirrodin.
Missed all of that.
Yeah, you missed Mirrodin, and then you missed Kamigawa. Oh, lucky you.
Yeah, that part was good to miss. I'm kind of sad that I missed Mirrodin. But
yeah, that's right.
And then I guess I got kind of back into it. So I basically became friends with Smitty.
Yeah,
And
F.U. Smitty from the CCO Dude Bros. Same guy.
Yeah.
That's okay.
And Brando.
Yeah.
And
Never heard of her.
yeah, I know, right? So met Longhair and Smitty through a couple of other friends.
Yeah.
And it just kind of came up one day at a ball game that they played Magic, and I was like, well, I used to play. I'd love to get back into it. And I started playing with them on the regular from that point on. So that would have been 2006.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, about 2006.
Here's the thing is, you started playing with them, and then Jeff, F.U.G. off of the Dude Bros again, started playing with me at the university.
Yeah.
Because I started playing like during Lorwyn block.
Yeah.
And Geoff was like, hey, like, do you want to come play? Do you remember Jesse Greenwood? And I was like, oh, yeah, I guess. Right? And so he invited me to Brando's house, and that was all.
Well, because the way that kind of worked out, though, was that even I ran into Jeff at a pre-release, and he and I got to talking. Did
you go to the pre-release just natively, or was it just like at a mall or something you saw him?
We ran into each other at, like independently of each other. We ran into each other both at the same pre-release.
Okay.
But it's not like we had planned to meet there or anything.
Yeah.
And just, I mean, kind of random. But so Geoff and I we're growing up, we're neighbors. But we never were really friends. Like, we didn't really connect. We ran it like with completely different people.
Yeah.
And then just come university, we just kind of started talking again. We met up, and I invited him to come out and join us. To come join like Brando and I and Steve and a few others.
Yeah, and then he
he brought you in.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
Yeah, and so I mean that's kind of actually like, I guess, part of the origin of our playgroup in a manner of speaking.
It sort of is, yeah. And you know what? I covered my origin stories when I played at the university with Geoff, and then he invited me to Brando's. That was in the first episode of Commander Ad Populum that I covered that. So this is like it's all one big spider web. Everybody's connected, right? Like, I don't know. That's not what we're talking about, but it's certainly true when it's like a community of like-minded people. Everybody kind of knows everybody.
Yeah.
Even in a city that's, I know Saskatoon's not big.
6 degrees of separation, though.
6 degrees of separation. Everybody's 13th cousin or less.
Less so if you're in Prince Albert.
Yeah, that's where we're both from. Don't say that. So we all play Magic together. I live out in the country. You drive me frequently because I would indulge in an adult type of beverage sometimes.
Periodically,
yeah. If you listen to Commander Cookout, you'll know what we're talking about. So we talk on the way in and out of town to my house, and we talk about your... Again, is there a better word for anxiety and depression, or is that just what we're rolling with? I mean,
that's probably the easiest thing. I mean, that's going to be the most recognizable for people.
Okay.
In terms of anxiety,
But they are different things, though.
Yes.
And they're linked, but you don't have both of them if you have one of them, right?
No, I mean, it's more frequent that you'll find, again, that a person will have A and B, but you can totally have
A and D.
Yeah, but yeah,
Got there.
A and D is better. But they can absolutely exist independently of one of the other.
Okay.
So
Good example. We just sent the boy to Grandma and Grandpa's. Rebecca's upstairs. She swept the whole floor and cleaned the house because I think she's a little bit depressed.
Yeah.
Because now her kid is gone for a week. We go up to the lake and we're going to see him. It's going to be great again. But she cleaned the whole house because she was feeling a little bit depressed that she's not a mom this week.
yeah,
Is that? But she doesn't have anxiety about it because she knows that Valor's going to Grandma's house.
Yep.
So okay, how does that exist in your life? Because that's like just Rebecca, and now I'm talking about somebody who, again, suffers from it, or I perceive you as suffering.
So I mean, what she's experiencing right now, and again, I can't speak to her experience, but I mean, it's likely more of like she's just feeling. It's more that she's feeling down. I mean, we call it feeling depressed, but she's feeling down because, again, your son is away right now.
Some reason.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas for myself, so for example, what we just are calling short form anxiety here is actually referred to, or the technical term for it is generalized anxiety disorder, GAD.
GAD.
Yeah, okay. Or just anxiety is easier. And similarly, again, I've suffered from depression now since I was about 13.
Okay.
So about 19 years now. I've been...
Don't age yourself.
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, for a long time, I've been struggling with depression.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, it does kind of... It can kind of come in ebbs and flows, or depending on what is going on in life, depending on, again, whether or not you're taking medication or you're taking proper self-care.
Yeah.
Those are all big
things that I think that we're going to touch on briefly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. But, I mean, just looking at it in terms of the difference in terms of experience, I mean, you and I have talked a lot about this in the past, but with my anxiety, for example, where if you're looking at things on a scale of 1 to 10, where if you were to have a sudden moment of panic or of like a rush of worry, sort of
like I lost my wallet.
Yeah, exactly. Your anxiety, I'm guessing, would probably be, it might kind of rise from like until you find it, until probably like a 7 out of 10-ish?
Yeah. Like if I'm just hanging out like at a restaurant and I'm having a good time, my anxiety might be 0.
Exactly.
And then I lose my wallet or I left my phone in the bathroom and I got to go get it real quick before some slob steals it. I might shoot up to 8 or 9.
Yeah.
Versus somebody who has generalized anxiety disorder like yourself.
Yeah.
You've said in the past your anxiety might just hang out at a 5 or a 6 baseline. Yeah.
So my baseline is a hell of a lot higher. And so, I mean, there's a lot of kind of side effects of that. Mm-hmm. One of the kind of prominent ones for me is, I mean, beyond feeling that constant state of worry, beyond being almost in a constant state of flight, as it were, is that because my levels of anxiety are so much higher so consistently, it means that I also I feel exhausted constantly as a result.
So you're always drinking caffeine.
That's part of it. that and having a toddler at home.
Who
didn't sleep for the first 8 months.
Yeah, you're preaching to the choir there.
Just looking at like so talking about the scales and again are the kind of experiences with that. So I mean, for me, when I have I guess like a more of a panic attack, as it were.
Hold on, I'm going to stop you there because I thought of something. There's 2 things that what you've said make me think of is because we've talked about it and I've seen the physical Jesse when this happens.
Yeah.
As your friend, I think, okay, what can I do? That's the first thing. The second thing is if this is you, if you're listening to this and you ever feel like you have, I'll say panic attack because you use that word.
Yep.
I'm sure people who have them know what I'm talking about. What types of things do you do? So if I was me and I saw you having a panic attack, and if you were you having a panic attack, what do we do?
Well, it's going to kind of, it's really going to vary from person to person. I mean, there's not going to be any one universal response that's going to work. Each person is going, I mean, it's just as, again, how I experience anxiety or my panic attacks is likely going to be different from a person across the street might experience theirs, right?
Okay. How do you experience them? What happens to you?
So, I mean, we're talking like really feeling really jittery. So again, sometimes you might see like my legs or hands might be kind of shaking or twitching a lot. Increased heart rate, might start to sweat profusely.
Other than it being hot, and we're in Studio CCO and it's hot in here.
Yeah.
So is that...
It's a little on the warm
good,
side.
You're good right now?
Yeah, I mean,
Just-
if I'm perspiring, it's just because I'm a fat bastard right now.
Just regular
But-
sweaty.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It's just because I'm fat and gross right now. Thanks for the reminder, Ryan. But yeah, I mean, everyone's going to experience it a little bit differently. So there's the increased heart rate, the sweating, sometimes even just looking more flushed is part of it too, which I mean can also be impacted by the fact that I consume probably too much caffeine to compensate for the anxiety, which also feeds it. It's kind of a nasty feedback cycle there.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm sure that the signs and symptoms, the signs that I see, and the symptoms that you feel, I'm sure that there's a range, right? Like if your baseline's a 5 and you have, I'll say some anxiety that brings you to an 8, that's different than a 10.
Yeah.
And
if I was a 10, you wouldn't even be seeing me. I'd be out of the room. I'd be shut down in a corner.
yeah, I think I've almost seen that, and from our previous discussions on the matter, I know kind of just to let you do your thing because you have some coping mechanisms, as you call them, some breathing, maybe some mental exercises. You put yourself in a quiet, dark place that gives you some
stimuli.
space, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, one of the other things though is, I mean, it's if it's a really bad panic attack, so beyond the anxiety, if it's getting into panic attack territory, it's going to be like an overwhelming sense of dread. It's going to feel like everything is just closing in or shutting down on me, like everything's coming down on me kind of thing, right? And like there's nothing I can do, like I'm losing control. Sometimes I'll even feel the need to like I'm going to throw up.
Ooh.
Like there's a whole kind of range of symptoms. It really depends on where I'm at and how I'm managing.
Okay.
But in terms of, I guess, management and or mitigation, I mean, I've been seeing a therapist now for quite some time who's been a ton of help with that. So
The therapist helps?
Yeah.
Like sorry, you just
therapy.
said the therapy helps. How? What do you do with the therapy? Like, is this something that other people who have experiences like you experience, like do they just go out and find a therapist? Do they talk to their friends, their spouses, or like what do they do?
I would recommend researching it personally.
It's like going online and Googling like mental health therapist?
Not, I mean, most therapy, I mean, therapy in general is for mental health. But I mean, if you think that, for example, what you're experiencing is something along the lines of anxiety or panic attacks or depression, there are a lot of therapists will actually specialize in certain branches of mental health.
Oh, next level.
Yeah, and
Next
so,
level. There's different branches?
Oh yeah.
We're not going to go that deep.
No,
this is very general
or
today.
I mean, branches might not be the right term.
No, that's a good term.
But that being said, though, you want to make sure that you're getting someone or you're seeing someone who can properly address what it is that you're experiencing, right? There's no point in going to see a therapist who specializes in, say, bipolar disorder if you're only going there for anxiety.
Yeah,
or vice versa.
Yeah,
right?
if you need your tires changed, you're not going to go to a transmission shop.
Exactly.
Blue collar layman terms. Gotcha.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
Fair point. Yeah, and so I mean, the therapist I've seen has been a great help. I mean, it's not just like, or it's not like what we have in our minds of like laying down on like one of those day beds,
on the bench and you cry.
You know, doc, like today I've been. Yeah, I mean, there is some of that. But one of the big parts, though, that has been a huge help was the recommendation and the kind of guidance towards and through something called CBT, Cognitive Behavioral Therapy.
Okay.
Which
I've heard that term before.
Yeah. So CBT is basically, or my understanding and how it's kind of worked for me, has been essentially working to, I guess, kind of analyze my own behaviors, my own symptoms, developing kind of a process for, an internal process for kind of analyzing the triggers for that. So again, what has kind of caused that behavior or that feeling, then looking at how that feeling's impacting me, looking at whether or not that response or that fear is a logical one or one that makes any sense.
An appropriate one for the scenario. Like why do I feel like the house I'm in is going to burn down when it's raining outside?
Yeah.
Like that.
Or again, looking at it similarly, if someone shot at you and you felt afraid, yes, that is a logical response, right? Feeling afraid because someone's trying to kill you is a logical response. However, feeling afraid because you're having a bad day and suddenly you feel like you're going to lose your job, your family's going to leave you, and something else, that's not exactly a logical response, but that's where your mind might take it. And so it's a matter of looking at that and then kind of talking yourself through it in a manner of speaking.
And that's what I've sort of witnessed you do when you are elevated.
Yeah, I mean, it's not
I've never seen you. Jesse's in the corner talking to himself again, guys. No, that's not what I'm saying. But you do maybe just say, just give me a minute, guys, or you go to another room or what have you.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, there's sometimes where I need to just kind of step away for a minute, and it definitely helps for me to, again, sometimes kind of step away, reduce the stimuli around me. So again, when we've been over at Smitty's place or at my place, I don't think it's happened really when we've been at Brando's, but I haven't been playing at his as much in the last while.
Yeah, that's right.
But again, it's a matter sometimes of just going into like a darker room for a couple minutes just to kind of give myself a break, reduce all of the things that are going on around me, just so I can really focus internally for a couple minutes. But I mean, sometimes that's not a possibility. I mean, if you and I are at a GP,
or actually that's a good example because you and I but we went to Magic Fest Calgary in March, and you're surrounded by thousands of people.
Yeah.
Before we get too much into that, you used the word trigger a couple minutes ago.
Yeah.
Is that an appropriate word? Because
yes,
you get in trouble on the internet if you have a podcast and you say the word trigger. But I'm going to say it a bunch this time, this episode, because we're talking about things that might trigger your anxiety.
Yeah,
and
again, everyone's going to respond differently to the use of that term. For me, I find it's appropriate because, again, like I would even in my own therapy sessions, I would refer to it as, again, I feel something triggered my anxiety.
Something happens, and that made you feel a certain way.
Or I might say that I'm unable to identify exactly what the trigger was for this particular bout of anxiety. But this is what happened. And sometimes it might be just, again, talking to the therapist, getting some help and kind of breaking down the situation and walking through it to see what exactly it was that might have actually caused that bout of anxiety or that panic attack, right? That period of elevation.
So let's go back to the Magic Fest example.
Yeah.
Did you have any experiences like this when we were there?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things for me too with my anxiety is that, again, it is tough being in big crowds, right?
Do you think that's common, or do you know that that's common or not? I'm just thinking of like when you sit down with somebody that's a little bit awkward at maybe an F&M, tight close quarters in a store or at a GP in this giant room with 1,000 people surrounding you. Is it common to feel nervous or anxious around people? Yeah,
well, there's that's going to be different personality types. I mean, there's a million and one things that could lead to a person feeling kind of awkward or, again, kind of very introverted in those situations.
I'm thinking of specific examples when I sat down to play against people in Calgary. Like, I don't know, maybe some people were just having an anxious portion of their day or had a bad day and that made them feel depressed. I'm just kind of trying to rationalize all this in my own head.
Yeah, and I mean, just to quickly clarify here, one of the things I think is kind of important here is just to clarify that between when you refer to someone feeling depressed versus someone struggling with depression.
Yes.
Because again, feeling depressed is just like anyone can feel depressed. Absolutely any person can feel depressed. Something bad happens, you're likely to feel down.
Like Rebecca upstairs right now.
Exactly, yeah.
Versus somebody who suffers, or we perceive them as suffering from...
depression. They struggle with depression.
Depression, or whatever the clinical term for depression is. Yes. I don't know. Do you know what that is? I'm not a doctor.
No, I mean, depression is just the easiest way to refer. I mean, there's different types of depression, but...
Okay, we'll just
blanket term.
Yeah, we'll just umbrella that as
exactly.
depression. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, again, going back to the GP example... I think that there would likely be a lot of people there that would struggle with anxiety, just from what I saw from other players' kind of, physical responses and just looking at their behaviors.
What did you see specifically? Because, again, we're going to get into this maybe in a few minutes or part 2 of this interview, but specifically, if you're this person or if this person is your friend, what did you see?
Part of it was, I mean, again, just a lot of the same kind of symptoms that I personally experienced, right? So, I mean, looking at people and seeing that, again, they've got kind of like a twitching leg, or like a shaking leg, their hands might be quivering a little bit.
Does your anxiety, like people always lump the terms fight or flight in, right? You use the word or the phrase constant state of flight.
Yes.
Is the opposite to that a state of fight? Does that also happen when somebody is anxious about something? Do they get aggressive? Are they rude?
Yeah, that can be a response.
Or are they just being abrupt because it's like they're being overstimulated?
I mean, I'm sure it could be any combination thereof. I know for myself, again, and thank you for bringing that up, actually. That's kind of one of the things that I struggle with sometimes is that, like there have been times where I might be kind of snappy or I might just come across as just a complete... Can I swear on here?
You can swear on this episode.
How's this? I can come across as just a complete jerk. Sure. A complete douche canoe.
Douche canoe. Is that a Canadian term?
Most likely.
Okay. I like it.
Just because I know sometimes, again, that I'm either short or I might even just seem, again, a little overly aggressive in terms of how I might respond to someone, warranted or unwarranted. And yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that I do my best to try and recognize. And if I have behaved in such a way, if I have spoken out of turn, or again, a little while ago, I felt that was being overly critical of Evan for being really meticulous in one of his turns. Because again, I was feeling really anxious. I was feeling kind of wound up.
Oh, I remember the night you were talking about now. Yeah, okay.
I like how my jerkish attitude kind of remained in your mind. Thanks.
Yeah, no. I remember the specific example, and this is actually double perfect example because that was me not recognizing the signs that you were having a moment, for lack of a better term. And if I would have known that, I would have said either maybe Jesse, do you need a minute, or go up and check the chicken wings, or just whatever, right? But instead, I was like, hey, just let him play, right? Yeah. And I was calling you out.
Oh no, and that's fine. But you see, that's one of the things though, is that and again, like I said, everyone's going to respond a little bit differently. For me, it actually helps to have someone call me out on it, because it's kind of like the reminder of, hey, you need to just like stop talking because you're going to say something you might regret. Right.
Okay.
And I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be the guy that is making enemies out of friends because I'm letting my own emotions run away with me.
Yeah. You know what? I think instead of calling, I'm really good at calling people out. I don't know if you know.
No, I'd never noticed.
I think what would be a better, healthier scenario for me to think of it in is politely interjecting. If I see somebody, it doesn't need to be you, even though it probably will be. if I see anybody who's maybe doing that kind of thing, I'll say, hey, like, just let them play. Take a minute, just like check your phone or something, and let Evan do his turn. Like, I don't know. I don't know.
I mean,
is that? Am I close?
Like I said, it's going to really depend person to person, right? I mean, some people are more likely to take offense from that, I think, than others.
I don't worry. I've never offended anybody.
Yeah, I know, right? For myself, again, it helps because, again, I'm at a point where I'm more self-aware of what it is that I'm experiencing and how best to kind of manage or mitigate those emotions or that experience, right? Or those symptoms. Whereas for some other people, they might not recognize that they're experiencing, again, some symptoms of anxiety, or it could be that person is actually just outright a complete douche canoe.
Yeah, and that's what's so difficult to interpret, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I think that the best thing is not to try and just kind of guess or assume that someone has anxiety or depression or
XYZ issue doesn't need to be anxiety
just based
or depression.
on certain symptoms or behaviors that you're seeing, right?
Yeah. Never assume, I think, is the take-home tweetable message there.
Yeah, and I mean, again, it's another thing, though, if you see someone that you think is struggling, again, especially if you know them well, that, again, yeah, it might not hurt to just kind of talk to them and be, or kind of pull them aside, not necessarily in like a table public moment, right? Where, again, there's you, them, and a couple of other people. But if you have an opportunity to just kind of say privately, hey, Ryan, like, looks like you might be having like a bit of a rough time here.
Okay. Before we get into that, the public table moment. I think it's best to maybe just be polite and say, hey, let Evan play his turn. He's got lots of triggers he's got to manage. He was playing like a modular artifact deck, right? Yeah. Oh, sorry. You know what I mean. He was playing a modular artifact deck that has 700 different modular triggers that he's got to move counters in and out of the graveyard, all that jazz. So it's like, let him play his turn, and then maybe after the game, or I'm usually the last one there, or we are, because you're driving me home and I got to like finish my whatever. Then we say, hey, like, are you okay? Are you having trouble with something? I did that the other day with Brando because he hadn't come to our regular Tuesday Night Magic group for it's like 3 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
Right? I find out now that like a portion of the tiles in his basement fell out of the basement roof, and he was working like 4 a.m. to 4 p.m. like for 13 days in a row or something. So like, yeah, he's not going to come. Right? So you just asked a question, and it could be nothing. Like Brando was just tired because he was working for 12 hours, 13 days in a row.
Yep.
Or it could be something like we've discussed, and we're all whatever, healthier, better friends, closer, better playgroup as a result.
Yep.
Okay, just jumping in real quick. This is after the fact, after the interview is over and Jesse has left my house. That's the end of part 1. Stay tuned next week. We're going to conclude the interview with some tools and some feel goods on what you can do to help people in your local magic scene, playgroup, family, circle of friends, whatever it is. And of course, I'm going to include some links and phone numbers and stuff below from my own personal research on where I think might be a good place for people to go if they are trying to help or need help. And of course, I'm going to mention this next week as well. If you are out there in the health industry and you know of good places that people can go to learn or help others or help themselves, feel free to comment on the Facebook thread for episode 14 and 15. Of course, you can tweet at me and I'll retweet and we'll help and spread the word. Let's make it happen. Let's make our magic community, our family, our circle of friends, let's make it all better. Okay, I'll see you next Wednesday.